Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And we have a lot to dive into, mainly because of these recent developments in Congress, which we've covered in several videos. I believe we talked about it last stream when these were starting to develop, but that was first when McCarthy got removed from his speakership post and he was held accountable. That does not happen very often in the United States government at all, but it did happen thanks to Matt Gaetz, who took a lot of heat for it by a lot of different people. And if we're able to replace McCarthy with somebody better, that's going to be a very good thing. Of course, the establishment is not very happy about that right now. And so many people in Congress are not exactly being team players. And people are going to say, well, Gaetz wasn't a team player because Gaetz raised the motion to remove McCarthy and only 8 Republicans wanted to remove him. But at the end of the day, McCarthy needed to be held accountable because McCarthy agreed to several promises at the onset of this Congress that allowed him to become speaker, and everybody was a team player to let him do that, and he was a team player in order to agree to those demands. Then he broke those demands, and because he broke the demands, well, he got removed, and he got what he deserved. And you could say, well, Democrats voted to remove him, but like Democrats just don't like him. They're going to vote against every single Republican for speaker regardless, because they, may have a 2% chance of, we'll get a deal done to get Jeffrey speaker, which is never going to happen, by the way. But it's obvious to see why they did it. They did it because they don't like McCarthy, because McCarthy is a Republican. It's not because, McCarthy's a good Republican. But that's beside the point. McCarthy's gone, rightfully so, very good thing. Now we get to the replacement process, because now it's like, who do we replace him with? Do we replace him with somebody that's a McCarthy light, like a Steve Scalise, relatively go along with the establishment guy, might throw you a bone here and there rhetorically, but doesn't really get much done, and co-signs onto a lot of liberal pork, globalist legislation, things that we should not exactly be supporting? But that's exactly what a lot of these people in Congress do. We have, we sometimes call them rhinos. I prefer the term establishment Republicans. I feel like rhino is too universal because to some extent, a majority of Republicans that are in elected office, you could say, are rhinos, and it's kind of a little bit of an oxymoron. So I think there's levels to it. There's your rhinos, your all-out rhinos, you have your establishment Republicans, and a lot of neocons kind of fit into both categories, or in the middle of that, I guess you would say. And then you have your solid conservatives, your Tea Party types might go in there. Some of the more, maybe you have some libertarian tendencies, but you're good on other stuff, will go into that category. And then you have at the top, your America First conservatives, your national populists. And that's the direction the Republican Party has been heading in for quite some time. And it's a very good thing. And if we can get a speaker that represents the interests of the base to a large extent, that would be a massive positive development for the Republican Party. And we have that opportunity in Jim Jordan. Jordan's very solid. Is he like the best congressman overall if you analyze every single vote? Not necessarily, but I would say he is in that top tier or just below the top tier of your Republicans that I just listed there. And he's one of the better members of Congress. He's one of the better members of the Freedom Caucus, which is kind of like the Tea Party caucus, but even though you have a lot of the more national populist types like Gosar in there, it's just kind of like the based caucus. And yes, you have your, several cringe people in there from time to time. I'm not going to say every single member of that caucus is solid. You look at somebody like Chip Roy. Even though Chip Roy has a voting record that on some issues is solid, he also cries tears for Liz Cheney and does all these other wacky things that are just showing his true colors from time to time. But nevertheless, Jim Jordan is a part of the good caucus there, and it shows that you have a lot of support for somebody who is a solid, authentic, America First conservative to lead the Republican Party in Congress, and who would not be a detriment to Trump's agenda if Trump were to get in there in 2025, unlike somebody like Paul Ryan or potentially a future backstabbing snake like Kevin McCarthy. So what we are doing is we are trying to, look at the big picture here, and we're trying to get somebody in there that's more solid. Jordan gets close. He's knocking on the door. He gets 200 votes the first round. But you still have 20 people, 20 establishment Republicans who decided to defect. And then the next round, you get a couple of more defectors. A lot of people expected way more than just like 2 or 3. And I think a lot of those people could come back if some sort of a deal is reached. But you had also one that came back to Jordan, or one that did not vote for him round 1, but did vote for him in round 2. So what this does is it just basically shows that a lot of these people in Congress, maybe not a majority of them, because you have a lot of team players that I would not have expected in districts that you would probably not expect them to vote the way they did, but nevertheless, they did the right thing. But when it comes down to how many people in Congress that did not vote for Jordan that there were that are on the Republican side, it shows there's a big problem. You have the swamp really running deep, and it's funny because I look at this, and it's like every single person who received a vote for Speaker, round 1, because round 2 is a little bit different because you had a couple of other people in the mix. But round 1, every single person who received a vote to be Speaker who was not named Jim Jordan voted for Jim Jordan to be Speaker or publicly endorsed Jim Jordan to be Speaker in the case of Lee Zeldin, because Lee Zeldin, for those who don't know, is not in Congress. And this is a big problem that we see because there's this disconnect. Even people like McCarthy, at least they're kind of bending the knee somewhat and supporting Jordan, but he still has his Only Kevin crew. Why isn't he talking to the Only Kevin crew? Why isn't he whipping votes for Jordan? What's the deal here? And you have these deranged people. We hear constantly about how the Trump wing of the party does not have decency or morals, and then you see people trying to beat up Matt Gaetz on the House floor. It's insane. And then on top of that, you also see these people deranged tweeting at 3 o'clock in the morning, like Derek Van Orden, who we thought was going to be solid, but gets in there and is just completely caving. And he's supporting Jordan, but he's still mad at Gaetz. I don't know. They're in some weird Kevin McCarthy personality cult that, it's a lot of these people will say that Trump runs the cult of personality. These are the people that are acting like they're in a cult of personality, but it's not for somebody cool like Donald Trump, somebody who's actually solid and cares about this country. It's for some lame establishment moron named Kevin McCarthy who needs to go, and his brand of conservatism needs to go. This is a new era. It's a new day. The days of old are gone, and you have a political class that is out of touch with its base. That's why the Republican Party's failing. You have a disconnect. And even if you nominate candidates in some districts who possibly could win and would be very solid, what happens? The GOP funds them in a primary in terms of funding the race, but they don't fund the candidate. They fund the opposition candidate, and then there's no money left in the general election, and they just ignore the race, and they try to protect somebody like Don Bacon, who probably is going to lose, by the way, which is another thing, because you look at the clowns who did not vote for Jim Jordan. Don Bacon still voting for Kevin McCarthy, who's not even running. Nobody's running. There's no reason to vote for Kevin McCarthy. Bacon thinks it's going to save him in the left trending district in Nebraska. He barely won it in 2022. With Trump on the ballot, he's not going to win that district. He's not. He's going to go down, plain and simple, because ticket splitting in Nebraska, not really that big. And this stunt is not exactly going to help him. And possibly you'll have Republicans either A, successfully primary him out this time and the district flips, or B, a lot of Republicans will be voting third party on that ballot, and then that district will flip. And if it does, I will laugh, because it's probably not going to be the determining seat for the House. And if it's not, I'm going to laugh quite a bit. And if he wins and it's 218, 217 Republican, that guy's the most powerful guy in the House, the most powerful moron, by the way. And then down the list, you could go down the list and see what you have here. A lot of people like Buck, he's weird, man. His voting patterns all over the place. I will say, like, he does one thing you think is good, then he does 4 things that are just outlandish. I don't exactly know what his angle is. Didn't he vote to remove McCarthy, and then he's like seething about the replacement? It's a disaster. It's just like Tom Rice, who voted to object to 2020 and then voted to impeach Donald Trump for something he didn't do. Then you have people like Buchanan, Vern Buchanan, Lori Chavez DeRemer. A lot of these people, Mario Diaz-Balart, Jake Ellzey, they don't have to worry about re-election. It's not, you can't really use the Jordan is too outlandish, he's too MAGA, he's too far right, whatever that means, whatever term they want to use that doesn't really mean anything, but they use it to virtue signal. None of that matters at all. Like, it doesn't. First of all, in a presidential election, the House results are going to be tied, in many cases, directly to the presidential results. Funding for individual races matters a lot less because you have a very strong down ballot effect. And you even had it in the midterms to a certain extent. That's why Republicans failed in a place like Michigan in the House, but they did very well in a place like New York in the House, which is apparently one of the reasons why you have a little bit of a disconnect here, where some of those new New York representatives, I think 2 or 3 of the ones in New York that won in 2022 in swing districts are voting against Jim Jordan, which is ironic because they were helped to be elected by a man named Lee Zeldin, who, even though some of these people are voting for Zeldin has endorsed Jordan. There's no reason for anybody to go out there and vote for Lee Zeldin when he doesn't want to become speaker, and you have a viable speaker who is Lee Zeldin endorsed. That's the way I see it. I just don't at all believe that these people are acting in good faith in any way, because they're not. They are a part of the uniparty, and it's showing because they are preventing a solid conservative from becoming speaker, all because they're butthurt about the fact that Matt Gaetz had the courage to hold their golden boy accountable. It's true. There's just nothing else to it. But you're looking at this list, like Drew Ferguson, safe red district, voted for Jordan the first time. Why did he vote against him the second time? Lobbyist phone call or something? It's ridiculous. Garbage Rhino from New York, another ridiculous vote. Carlos Jimenez, that district is red trending like crazy right now. There's nothing he has to be worried about electorally speaking, yet he's only Kevin for some reason. Really? What's the deal there? Oh, wait, the guy voted for Hillary Clinton, by the way, and now pretended to be some Trump guy in 2020, and now he's back to his old ways, or he's somewhere in the middle of the pendulum swing. It's ridiculous. Tony Gonzalez, he needs to be primaried. He's got several challengers. Kay Granger, who's a disaster, doesn't get talked about enough. She's been there forever. She needs to go. John James came out of left field because I was an early backer of James for Senate because of the fact that he was a solid candidate in Michigan, and he ran a solid campaign overall. But when it's all said and done, you look, he finally gets into Congress, and what is he exactly doing? He's going out there, and he's, for no reason, he said in the second vote he would back Jordan, and he still might in the future. A lot of these people are going to have talks. Maybe Jordan will still become speaker. I'm not saying he won't. We'll get to that in a minute. But it's like he votes for some random guy from Oklahoma, and he votes for some random public commissioner of Macomb County from 10 years ago in Candace Miller or whatever her name is. It's like, what are you doing? Like, seriously? He doesn't have to worry about re-election so much in a presidential year either. I mean, the only reason why he had such a narrow win back in 2022 was because Dixon weighed him down, or Whitmer's overperformance weighed him down, whichever way you want to look at it. Mike Kelly in Pennsylvania, another safe red district. Jen Kiggins in Virginia's second, disaster. And her video that she made that I saw explaining it was also a disaster. Like, the optics on this are not good in many ways. It's like, who are you trying to appeal to here exactly? I just don't get it. Another New Yorker. Again, Lee Zeldin saved their asses. They're probably, some of these people like Mike Lawler, probably not even going to win in 2022, to the point where it's like crazy. And then you have other people in like swing districts like Tom Keene in New Jersey, Young Kim, the other Korean one, Michelle Steele in California. All of those people are in Biden districts, and they probably are still going to win re-election. Mike Garcia is another example. And they went out there and they voted for Jordan. But none of these losers could do that. And a lot of them tend to have some, maybe not Garcia so much, but Kim and the other one, forgot the name for a second there, Keene from New Jersey. They tend to have some of these like establishment tendencies, but even then they had the decency and courage to still be team players, and that's what we need. We need people that just, you know, have power, wield enough resources to win, but still just take a stand where necessary. That's what we need. That's exactly what we need. Not these losers, not this list of people that bend over and cave and do a massive disservice and then say, well, Gates voted with the Democrats. I'm the real Republican. Really? Then why won't you make one speaker? Why won't you make one speaker then? Gates is holding you accountable. There's no reason for anybody not to vote for Jordan at this point. Jordan's not some crazy person. Is he America first to a large extent? I would say yes. Is he MAGA? Yeah. Why is that a bad thing exactly? He likes Trump, but he's a man of his own. He's likable. He overperforms Trump in his district every single time. I mean, you have all the resist libs throughout this, he's like Joe Paterno with the gym scandal, but there's no exact evidence of any wrongdoing to the point where it doesn't matter. And it's not like we can't find stuff in every single major politician's past that we could throw up there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. The bottom line is, I would say of the 22 people that voted against Jordan, 15 of them are in like safe districts or districts that have zero shot at flipping, to the point where it shouldn't even matter. And then on top of that, cut a deal with 4 of the others. And all you need is 213. By the way, you could have people vote present. Their votes are not going to count either way, to the point where Jordan just needs 213 to win because he has to beat Jeffries. I'd say make it 215, because at this rate, people like Don Bacon, push comes to shove, they might even vote for Jeffries because they have Jordan derangement syndrome. It's ridiculous, but it's true. And it's a major problem. So a lot of people are wondering what happened today, because there was no vote today, and it came out reports saying Jordan said he would step aside and they weren't going to vote again until January, and they were going to have this McCarthy replacement in there. Forgot like some I don't even know what his name was, but we look at this and it's like, yeah, Patrick McHenry. There we go. Nobody's ever heard of this guy. Some random establishment Republican from North Carolina. Another member of the Mick establishment. It would be the McCarthy to McHenry. They're like the same exact person when it comes to the issues. This guy's like the dollar store edition of Kevin McCarthy. And that was supposed to be what Republicans were going to do. They were going to expand the powers of the speaker until January, until they, you know, were going to, in the back room, try to strike some deal where by then they could maybe get a speaker. But either way, it doesn't matter, because those reports have been completely scrapped and they're going to keep voting for Jordan. And McCarthy went 15 rounds. I have no reason to believe Jordan can't go 15 or possibly even more. This is going to be, you know, drawn out for a very long time. And we'll have to see what the end result is, but it just depends on if a deal gets made. And hopefully Jordan doesn't have to cede too much ground to these crazy establishment lunatics who are seething at the prospect of an actual conservative in leadership. Democrats get theirs. They get their Pelosi in there, whose approval rating's in the gutter. If it's not about appealing to moderates or independents at that point, because the approval rating for McCarthy's in the gutter. The approval rating for a lot of these people is in the gutter. The approval rating for Pelosi was in the gutter. For Jeffries, I mean, he's not that well known, so I don't know really what the numbers are, but the guy is very liberal, to the point where it's like, why cannot we have an actual conservative if they can have actual liberals? That's what I have to say. There's no reason for it. This is double standards in politics, and we actually can take a hammer to it by just having a backbone for once, but instead we would rather just complain about the double standards instead of actually trying to get anything done. And what happens at that point is you keep losing the country further and further and further and further, and we will never have a chance at winning, and we're going to be in a much, much worse place than before. So that's that. For the speaker argument there, as many people do know, they are bringing more votes to the floor eventually. They said we do a vote today. Now it's been pushed back to early tomorrow. So we'll definitely be keeping you guys updated over here as these votes come in, for sure, because this is huge. And it would be a massive victory if Jordan gets through. People will be signing the Matt Gaetz apology form. And, a lot of people are going to be seething. A lot of people in the establishment, I'm sure, will be seething. Also, where is the DeSantis people on this exactly? Because a lot of them have been very upset and angry about this for whatever reason. And they're angry that Trump endorsed Jordan, so they are trying to support somebody else in many cases, which is funny because they're the same people that ridicule Trump for supporting somebody like McCarthy. It's almost like their only conviction is just to oppose what Trump does, because that's that. I didn't think McCarthy was a good endorsement for Donald Trump to make, but he was going to become speaker regardless, and we saw that, but I think it worked out in the end. I'm glad what happened, so long as we're able to go out there and get Jordan, which was the correct endorsement that Trump made this time around. So, without further ado, we're going to talk a little bit about the latest with Team DeSantis and the insane stuff that's going on there. They are seething about height. They're melting down because people posted memes. That's all this is. They're trying to ruin people's lives because they post memes, because they make fun of his awful, insufferable employees. And they're the reason why he's losing, but their head's so far up their rear end that they can't even tell. They can't even tell why they're losing. There's many reasons why DeSantis is losing, and we're going to get to that, but let's see. $50 super chat, by the way. This guy sent before the stream. That's going to be answered first from Flygaro. Thank you very much for the 50. Big appreciation. If anybody wants to top that tonight, be my guest. But nevertheless, so if Chuck Schumer rejected the individual budget bills and McCarthy gave in with the CR and lost his job, why is there no heat on Schumer for being the true bottleneck? Seems like the GOP does not know how to play hardball and loses every single time. Well, that's exactly what they do. And it's funny because you're looking at something like this, and it's like even when we win, it's usually because the GOP establishment manages to be so incompetent. That's the thing. And you're looking at the Dems. They have that thing on lock. They know what they're doing. And it could be a blessing in disguise that McCarthy ended up giving into that. It could be. But we'll just have to see. We have a long way to go before this fight in particular is over. But thank you for the super chat. Flygaro. John Waffle H2P says there are people suggesting George W. Bush for speaker. What kind of drugs are they on? Meth. A lot of meth. Meth, PCP. I don't know. You would have to be on drugs like that to be a normal person and want George W. Bush for speaker. Perth Luxury says Tom Brady or Bill Belichick, and both are pro-MAGA. Well, Brady's very wishy-washy. You know, he had the MAGA hat in his locker, and he was friends with Trump. And then his wife said, you're not allowed to talk about politics anymore. And he didn't talk about politics anymore. And then he goes to Biden's White House and, I don't know, makes fun of both Trump and Biden. I don't know. Belichick, on the other hand, I just don't like the guy. I know he supports Trump and all. I'm just not really a big Bill Belichick fan. The guy's getting old, and it kind of shows that he's nothing without Tom Brady. He goes out there, what is he this season? Like 1-4, 1-5. The Patriots are a disaster. They need to tank for Caleb Williams because at this point, there's really no saving what's going on in New England. And now they get to taste what it's like to be a bottom feeder, while teams such as Detroit are sitting atop of the league. Very interesting times we live in. Big Boy Berg says, I stayed up late for this stream, definitely getting fired tomorrow. Well, thank you for the super chat to let me know. We'll see how it goes. SMW Physicist says, how come some of the worst Republicans in office come from some of the most conservative parts of the country? Very good question. And the answer stems from the fact that a lot of these Republican parties have existed for a very long time, and they're a club, and certain individuals do tend to have a lot of money and resources that run for office, and they're able to use that to their advantage to win, and they don't have to worry about, appealing so much to the people because they're always going to win. And even if you try to primary them in some cases, depending on how bad they are, they're still going to win a primary because they have all the money, they have all the resources. So it's kind of a game of that. You would think the South would produce a lot of solid, authentic conservatives and national popular. You don't see that. You don't see that at all. I mean, in some cases you do. I mean, you see it probably more likely in Ohio, where you have somebody like Jordan in Congress and you have Vance in the Senate. And even then, there's still a lot of work to be done in Ohio. I mean, their governor's pretty weak. There's a lot of things going on there. But still, I think it's just because of the long tenured, just I guess you would say, the standing of a lot of these people in these parties where they're able to have the monopoly to the point where whatever voice the people have don't even matter. And then when you have like rising MAGA factions in some parties, a lot of those factions, they don't have a lot of political experience because it's kind of a new thing. And a lot of these people are kind of, in a way, incompetent, even if I agree with them on the issues. Like, look at what you see in, I know, Pennsylvania, for example. Doug Mastriano was very good on all the issues. I think he had his heart in the right place, but did he know how to run a campaign to save his life? Not necessarily. But if you're able to merge the two and you have somebody like, Mark Robinson in North Carolina, Ted Budd in North Carolina, competent state party with above average leadership in terms of the positions that the people in power hold, and see what goes on there, they're able to go out there and win. Let's see. Christopher Laurie says, Kevin McCarthy's removal was a victory for Republicans, but yet some older Republicans in my family are mad at Gates. I think we've been losing for so long we don't know how to win. Well, there's always this weird establishment Stockholm syndrome, and I do think it's more common with some boomers, not all boomers, of course, but some boomers have it. And I think it's a major problem because they're just like, well, we can't poke the bear. We can't poke the bear because we won't have the power to resist whatever attack the bear is going to lay down on us. And I think in some cases we have to be tactful about certain things, and that may be true. But I think that this is relatively tactful. This is a good push of the envelope that doesn't rattle something too much to the point where it's just going to backfire on us. At worst, it's going to be net neutral. Everyone's going to forget about it by next year. We'll still have a weak speaker, but we tried and we held McCarthy accountable, which would have been worth it. So unless you have anyone else other than one of these like people like Don Bacon becoming speaker, which is not going to happen, we should be relatively good. So we'll have to see on that front. John Waffle says we need a primary Kiggins. I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. Would this be enough to successfully mount a primary challenge to her? It might be. I mean, I believe she's in a Trump district. Virginia is becoming more and more not conservative per se, but Republican friendly in the past couple of years. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed long-term thing, but I don't know, maybe Kiggins could be primary. She's very off-putting. I'm not a big fan of her. FM32047 says, did you see the he said no thing the Dems did? I don't think so. I don't know what that refers to. Alex Sarikos says, when George Santos is the most honest politician in Washington, you know that everyone needs to be voted out. Yeah, I said that. Everybody got mad at me. Oh, we lost. We're, trying to take out one of our best members with these resolutions. And that's exactly what it is. You have more votes in a Republican-led Congress to remove one of your more solid members in terms of voting record than you have members to elect an actual authentic conservative to be speaker. That's the kind of bind we're working with right here. I know the margins are very narrow, but even then, I mean, to be fair, if we had a wider majority, a lot of the people in those close races, we hear about, MAGA candidates, this, that, and the other thing, and they point to like 4 examples for the House. But a lot of the people that lost close races were generic Republicans in the House, which never gets talked about because it goes against the narrative, but it's true. Let's see, Southern Wind for 5, thank you. And it's true, George Santos is the people's liar, I say, because he has a lot of dishonest things that he said in his past, and I think it's more comical than actually harmful to the way he legislates or leads his district. But when you look at how authentic he is on policy, I was worried about him initially because, he's going to be bad on the issues. He said all these crazy things in the past that are contradictory ideological wise, but hey, it's paid off so far because his voting record is one of the most solid. And the way he's acted on social media is very flamboyant. But besides the point, I think he's been one of our most solid representatives. And anyone saying we need to get rid of him because of principles, Ilhan Omar doesn't get kicked out of Congress. She married her brother. We're fine with that for some reason. But Santos saying that I don't know, some bizarre lie about his family heritage or what school he went to. It's like either way, he's there and he's solid. He did what he had to do to get in there, and he's actually working for us. So what do you want me to say? You want me to cry about it? Want me to throw him under the bus? No, not going to happen. Not going to happen at all. The Sandwich Man says, I'm worried enough Republicans will vote president and Hakeem will become speaker. Should I be? I don't think they're going to do that. They're not dumb enough to do that. If they have a deal where some vote president, some might vote president, which may actually end up helping us depending on how many Republicans come around to Jordan. But they should have the votes for Jordan. There's no reason for it. I mean, everybody knows the number one goal of a politician is to get reelected. And what they are doing with this is essentially just throwing people under the bus that doesn't even bode well for their reelection bids. It doesn't, because Trump's going to be the front and center big guy in 2024, and everybody who's voting for Trump is going to vote Republican down ballot in most cases, and he'll even get some third party votes or Biden voters voting Republican down ballot to the point where everybody's going to outperform Trump in the House. And Trump may have enough support to win a majority of House districts, and Republicans, therefore, are going to win the House. So that's the way I see it. There's no reason for anybody to be against voting for Jordan. Apex Caliber says, can you dispel the notion that RFK is taking votes from Trump? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that he has a higher favorable rating among Republicans, but it doesn't mean they're going to vote for him. I mean, these things change. He hasn't been attacked on the issues whatsoever. And if he has been, he's been attacked by the left. The right's been embracing him, which is not something that should be done. You know, they could say, oh, if he's primarying out Biden, yeah, you know, hopefully he does well. Hopefully Biden loses support to this guy, and it could hurt Biden in the general. But now we're kind of in a situation where you're talking about RFK Jr. as an independent when he's, you know, at a higher favorable rating with Republicans and Democrats. Oh, this could be a problem. I understand why people say that, but like I said, he's not being attacked yet, and he still does have that appeal to that, I don't know, kind of like the Joe Rogan type crowd. And that's a type of crowd that probably, if anything, would break for Biden. I think you have to look at a support base. He does have these pseudo anti-establishment tendencies, but at the end of the day, what policies is RFK Jr. going to put in place that's actually really supported among Trump's base and that would defect people from voting for Trump, other than, oh, he makes them feel better about the vaccine stuff, which is already in the rearview mirror for most people. You got it, you got it. You didn't get it, you didn't get it. It's not going to be a number one issue for very many people come 2024. And if it is, some people that believe that that's the number one issue are still skeptical of RFK, because, I mean, RFK is not as anti-jab as people think. Just because he's a Democrat who's criticized the mandates doesn't really mean anything. So when it's all said and done, I do expect RFK Jr. to take slightly more votes away from Biden just because of the Kennedy name, the appeal to the boomer Democrats, and stuff like that. Noah Bodie says, Ken Buck's an adamant about antitrust legislation, and Jordan blocked it in the Judiciary Committee. That's why Ken Buck hates Jordan. Well, you know what? Get over it. Settle the differences later. Depends what antitrust legislation he's talking about, because maybe they could work out a deal somehow. Oh, I hate you because you disagreed with me on this one piece of legislation 5 years ago. Really? That's what we're focused on here? I mean, there's probably a lot of people who disagreed with Jordan on that who are still backing him for speaker, to the point where that's not a sufficient excuse. BNDR News says Trump for speaker is the only way forward. There's no way they'd make him speaker if Jordan doesn't have the votes. I hate to break it to people. I would like to see it temporarily, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen whatsoever. Noah Bodie says even Brian Fitzpatrick voted for Jordan. Well, again, that's also something, because Brian Fitzpatrick has been a rhino. I mean, I would classify him as a rhino, even above an establishment Republican. His district is heavily blue, and he doesn't have the best voting record overall. But even then, he's becoming Fitzmagic. He's the team player now. He's going out there and he's doing the right thing for once. I mean, he didn't vote to impeach Trump. That's another positive thing. And I guess you could say he's one of the better rhinos in that front because he's quiet. But either way, if somebody like Fitzpatrick is voting for Jordan, that should tell you that there's no reason for anybody to vote against Jordan if they have an R next to their name. That goes for Don Bacon as well, who lies. He lied to me. I tweeted, he's like posted something about rhinos or whatever, and I'm like, you vote for all of Biden's spending bills. You have no right to call people who are slightly left on certain economic issues rhinos, which he did vote for a lot of Biden spending bills. And he's like, no, actually, I didn't. I voted for this one and this one. It's like, you still voted for a lot of them, more of them than you should have. That's an issue. Mitchell Ryan says RGA pulled funding for Mastriano. I know they did. That's part of the problem. It's not the full problem, but it's part of the problem. And they viewed it as a lost cause. But I mean, it's true. He got severely underfunded, but the RGA is not the only source of funding. It's a source of funding. They should not have done that, especially because it did hurt down ballot. But that's not the only source of funding that people have that are running for governor. How much money did Carrie Lake even get from them as a proportion of all of the money she raised, or a lot of these other people that ran for governor? They should be able to raise a decent amount of money on their own. So all we could say, it's the RGA's fault, and to an extent, it is the RGA's fault. At some point, you have to look inward and say, what could have I done differently? How could have I gone out there and gotten the funding? And that's kind of the main issue that I see here. Sam Madsen says Kiggins' district is Biden +4. I mean, even not really an excuse. That's not an excuse to vote against the speaker when you have a lot of other Biden +4 Republicans that are voting for Jordan. Real Texan Politics says, I think Democrats have the slight edge to take back the House as of now. The speaker debacle isn't helping us. I agree with you on that point, but there's a long way to go. If the election were held today, Democrats probably do retake the House, but if it's held a year from now, I mean, a lot can change. Trump's going to be front and center. It's not going to be Kevin McCarthy / Jordan going up against generic Democrat. It's Trump versus Biden. And now Biden has a record. Biden could hide in the basement. They say Trump lost to a dementia patient, but he hid in the basement, so nobody really knew who Biden was. It was just like generic Democrat with 52% approval rating, or Donald Trump with an economic crisis. And Trump came pretty damn close, all things considered, to the point where I say I'm kind of impressed with his performance, especially because I don't even think his campaign was that well run. But I've looked and saw how he's managed himself over the past few years. He's gotten better. He's removed bad actors from his circle, maybe not all of them, but a good portion of them, and replaced them with solid people to the point where it's like, yeah, Trump's the guy. I think he's the favorite. I think he's going to go out there and win. Papa Tango says, this may sound ridiculous, but McHenry for speaker. I love him because he's pro-cryptocurrency. We need to restore America's financial competitiveness. Yeah, I'm going to pass on that. Oh, this one random issue he's good on. Yeah, it's not going to cut it. I'm sorry. Trump Reformation says dollar store version of Kevin McCarthy. That's too funny. It's true. He's the dollar store version. I mean, he's this guy who goes out there. His name is even similar, and he's going to be the same on policy. He just doesn't have as much political clout because nobody's ever heard of him. He is the dollar store version. Jonathan Williams says, good to see everyone again. Well, thanks for the super chat. Mr. Jimmy says, thoughts on North Carolina GOP, 10 Republican, 4 Democrat, or 11 Republican, 3 Democrat new map. I believe it's going to hold up, and that's probably one of the big midterm victories we got that doesn't get talked about was the North Carolina Supreme Court race where we flipped it to a lot of these redistricting lawsuits that allowed Democrats to kind of gerrymander their way through bad geography to an even map. It's not going to hold up, and we could pick up 3 or 4 seats in the House based off of North Carolina alone, which is awesome. Apex Caliber says, with reparations, RFK takes black votes from Biden. I don't know if he takes many votes from Biden overall, but it is true. Like, if you're going to be supporting reparations, you're probably not going to be getting a lot of the Trump base. You're not. And you could be like, well, Trump supported the Platinum Plan. First of all, the Platinum Plan was not reparations. And second of all, I believe that didn't help Trump among his own base to the point where that kind of proves the point there. Tucson PaleoCon for 20 says, can't stick around, but I hope y'all have fun. Prayers for Jim Jordan. Well, Thanks for the super chat. I agree. We need the prayers because we need him to get in there. And he's knocking on the door, but he's not quite there yet. FM32047 said that he said no thing was during Aguilar's speech in the first round of the speaker vote. Dems kept chanting it about Jim Jordan. Really pathetic. Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear that clip. I didn't see that on the timeline. But yeah, I mean, they're going to do anything that's desperate. And this really does scare them because you have somebody who does represent the interests of the voter base, does it well, is optical, that could end up being speaker. They don't like that. They don't want any part in that whatsoever. And that's why they're going out there and they're doing what they can do. The same donors that are funding the Democrats are funding the 20 to 25 that don't want Jordan to be speaker. That's what this comes down to. Apex Caliber's thoughts on Sidney Powell guilty plea hurt Trump. Well, it's the same thing with the Lin Wood stuff. I mean, he flipped. Powell flipped. I hated both of them. I really did not like Sidney Powell. Her and Wood's crazy stuff about 2020, it ruined any chance of any legitimate lawsuit because that's what was getting pointed to. They were dumb. They were very low IQ individuals who were going out there and working overtime to sabotage Trump. And a lot of people, even many in the audience, likely did buy into it at the time. But like people like Tucker have been vindicated. I think Trump recently said something in private negatively about Powell, and that's absolutely true. I mean, you're looking at that situation. You have people that are bad actors. They are flipping. They're flipping for misdemeanor charges so they can make Trump look bad. They were never on his side. These people were operatives. I called it from, I wouldn't say day one, maybe day one with Wood, but maybe day two with Powell. And looks like I've been proven vindicated. That's what I have to say about it. I don't know if it's going to hurt Trump at all when it comes down to Donald Trump and his own trial. I don't think any of this stuff is going to be taking place before the 2024 election. And there's two outcomes. A, Donald Trump wins in 2024, pardons himself for everything, or he gets convicted, they put him in jail, and he lays down the pardon, then he walks out. It would be hilarious. I'd love to see that, actually, because it'd just be awesome and surreal. Or Donald Trump does not win in 2024, and they just mysteriously drop all the charges because they know he's probably not going to run in 2028. And at that point, I don't believe he'd win a primary because he's not going to, I don't think he wants his legacy to be William Jennings Bryan so much as he wants it to be Grover Cleveland. Mr. Jimmy says, is Lesko to Hamadeh an upgrade for Congress in Arizona? Yeah, I do. I think so. Hamadeh is great. He's great on the issues. He ran a very solid campaign for AG that fell short because, redacted. Everybody knows. Even the neocons will agree that that race was redacted. Everybody knows. And it's sad to see that happen to him. It was like 100 vote difference, like ridiculous stuff. And he lives there. And for the people that say we want Blake Masters, I like Blake Masters. I will always like Blake Masters. That's not going to change. But Masters does not live in that district to the point where why do people, even if like the DeSantis camp, I see this, they want Masters to carpetbag and run for this seat, which is bizarre. I don't understand the affinity that these DeSimps have for Masters. It's very weird, especially because he lost by 5. A lot of these same people opposed him in the primary for somebody like Brnovich or whatever. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to Hamadeh, he'd be an upgrade over Lesko. He should be Attorney General right now, and he will likely get that seat. I don't want Masters to run for it. It's an unnecessarily divisive primary. Masters would be great in the Trump administration. Give him some position. He's a smart guy. He could definitely help move things along. Having him in the circle is a lot better than having a lot of the people that were in Trump's circle the first administration. Rule Americana says, can Trump win the black vote if he makes Kanye his VP and John Miller his Secretary of State? That's not going to happen, for one. For two, no. And this, beyond the joke super chat, it goes beyond that. If you put a black guy on the ticket as VP, you're not going to gain black votes. I hate to break it to you. It's not how it works. A lot of black people that vote Democrat view pretty much all black Republicans to be traitors. And even the ones that they don't despise outwardly, this doesn't mean they're going to vote for them. I mean, that's just the way it works. Maybe you get 1% total increased, but it's not going to change anything. They're still going to say Trump is racist. A lot of liberals will actually, not even just black Democrats, all Democrats are going to say Trump is racist. And the VP, if it's Byron Donalds, they'll call him the blackface for white supremacy, this, that, and the other thing. You'll see all these articles pop up. It's not going to change anything. It really won't. Biden could yell the N-word 30,000 times at every campaign speech. He's still winning the black vote. He is. As much as we want to sensationalize and say Democrats are the real race, it doesn't work that way. It's like the DeSantis people saying Trump is the real establishment. It's not how it works. It just lies. You string things together. Oh, well, this, that, and the other thing. It's not going to work. Even if like there's certain aspects of truth in it, it's not going to work. Jonathan Williams says it's a long shot, but is there a chance Michigan flips? Absolutely. It could. Depends on how strong Trump's campaign is. It's not going to flip because of the state party being competent and doing their job. So if Trump inspires enough voters there just to turn out, it could happen. The math is there, but will it get done? That's a whole other question. I think Biden being unpopular just helps. But again, when you give everyone, Democrats are going to be working overtime to make sure they get as much ballots in the ballot box as possible. Will it matter as much as it should? Maybe not. Apex Caliber says thoughts on Scott Pressler wants to ballot harvest. Well, he's right. I mean, Scott Pressler or not, a lot of people have been saying it. I've been saying it for a while. And we need to ballot harvest because if the left does it, we got to do it better, especially because Republicans live further apart from each other. So you got to even work harder than the Democrats do when you go to the cities and everything's so compact. But yeah, you're going to have to go out there and harvest ballots the way the left does it. If ballot harvesting is legal, we'll have to harvest our own. We'll have to do our thing. We'll have to get our people early voting. That's how we win. You can't, play the old game when it's a new game. You don't have to like the game. I don't like the game at all. But you're not going to get any power if you don't play the current game and win with it. That's my take that I've been saying, and it's 100% true whether people are comfortable with the words ballot harvesting or not. We're going to have to do it. Patriot 345 says, will you stream the Kentucky governor's election? I will. I should have streamed Louisiana. I did not, but I will stream the Kentucky one, absolutely. Stingray says, Trump doesn't need a lot of independent, millennial, or black votes. He just doesn't need to give them a reason to turn out and vote against him. It's 100% true. They'll say that that's voter suppression. It's funny. That's how the way the left operates to, excuse their election losses. They claim we're the ones that do it. They're the ones that do it a lot too. They just did it in Louisiana last weekend. But it's 100% true. If you don't inspire the other side to turn out against you, that's still a net win. I mean, that's the way it is. Or if you demoralize Democrats who are slightly disaffected and that keeps them home, that's a win, a net win. Hillary Clinton tried to do that with Republicans back in 2016. Didn't work out, but it's not suppression. It's just she's a bad politician and nobody bought her nonsense. Luke Newman says, in 2024, will Republicans have to gain seats in the House to have a bigger majority, or will it be the same amount of seats as we have now? Honestly, we'll probably lose a few because of redistricting, but it's going to be about the same. We have a 9-seat majority. That's probably going to shrink overnight to like 1 seat. So either way, if it breaks even with the new map, you might be good. Maybe you need a seat or two. It just depends on redistricting in some of these key states. But again, with possible redraws in Ohio, North Carolina, we may pick up some seats. Jonathan Williams says, if the GOP can improve messaging among younger black voters, it will pay off. Black boomers will never vote Republican, but young blacks might. This is technically slightly true if you look at like younger black men aged 18 to 29. That seems to be the demographic where Republicans have a little bit of promise, but even then, it's still like moving a giant boulder with like one finger. You're not gonna make much progress to the point where it makes much of a dent, and you're better off focusing on your own base, expanding your own margins with blue collar white voters in the Midwest, and maybe you will get some black voters from Detroit or Cleveland. Not a lot, but you'll still probably get the same percentage increase if you do that strategy than if you said, I'm going to do this, this, and this to try and appeal to black voters, and it just doesn't work. It just blows up in your face every time. Didn't save Trump in 2020. You could say, but this thing happened. This thing happened. Yeah, but I mean, seriously, like, yes, there's many reasons. There's many reasons for 2020. And I think that was one of them. Top Dog Obedience says Jordan to give speech at 8 Eastern tomorrow morning, then hold vote on the floor. Massey just tweeted this. Well, hopefully he can convince people. Sam Madsen says, why do you think America is more socially progressive than even Western European countries that are much more secular? Well, it depends how you define that, because a lot of those countries did legalize gay marriage before we did, for example. But when it comes down to like abortion, it is true that even like the Nordic countries that are super socially liberal that we always hear about, they don't allow abortion after the first trimester. Like, it's always 12 weeks. But we have like the abortion policies of China, of North Korea, of these communist states. So I don't know why exactly that is. I think it's because of the Supreme Court and how they've ruled over the years, honestly. And I think it's going to get a lot worse in some aspects before it gets better, even though the court does seem to be better than it was 10, 15 years ago, because you even then have a lot of these judges, they'll defect. It's always a problem. But it's true, when the law of the land goes into being the law, that kind of shapes the culture. We always hear, is politics downstream from culture or vice versa? Well, I think you could even say it's a feedback loop. I think there's certain elements of culture that influence politics, and a lot of, politics and even legislation can impact culture. Even prohibition, it worked for a while, I will say, for like 5 to 10 years. Not saying I support it per se, but it worked. I mean, you look at the average rates of consumption, they were dipping until the mafia got a hold of everything, and then things started to change. But still, the law does impact people's behaviors, at least for the time being in some instances. So, last super chat here. Mr. Jimmy says, will the speaker vote hurt Trump like the election Twitter mafia is saying? Yeah, I mean, I don't believe it will. I think in the long run, if Trump wins, it's going to help him a lot, because now you're going to have a much better speaker. Will this impact if people vote for Trump or not? No, it will not. Trump is front and center. Other Republican drama does not exactly concern Donald Trump. And if anything, if he has the pro-Trump speaker in there, maybe that could end up helping him, if anything. Who knows? We'll have to see. But it's not going to be a major issue. I don't believe it will. That's kind of a little separate. I think that the House vote will determine more on how Trump does than Trump and his election has any bearing on, the House has any bearing on if Trump wins. So that's what I'll say. Now, let's see. DeSantis. We have to talk about DeSantis. Also, Biden. Biden goes out there. He gives a speech about Israel and talks about how we need to push for unlimited funding in Ukraine. He scolds his own citizens for hating Muslims if they believe that Hamas is not good. And he's not helping Americans in the hostage situation. He's not. So that's what Biden's doing. Biden's speech was a disaster. That's the Brandon update. Don't believe we need to delve too much into it. But the bottom line is we need new leadership that can go out there, defeat Biden, put America first. That's Donald Trump, folks. That's Donald Trump. We hear a lot about Ron DeSantis. They're really pushing the photo op with what he's doing, bringing people back. And I understand, okay, we could say that's a positive thing. I guess I would say credit due. But at the same time, is it just a political photo op? By and large, you could say it is. I mean, he is now getting in the mud with Nikki Haley, and he's just really vying for second place. That's what this is about. He's vying for second place. And I think it's just kind of sad. It's just kind of sad to see, because you have somebody who was propped up for so long to be the next leader. He was going to be the guy to go take out Trump, less than a year ago. He was riding high on the polls. He was beating Trump in some polls. Now he's fallen significantly into the low teens and below the low teens, and now he's going to fall in the single digits. That's possibly. I mean, the donors are leaving him. The donors are flocking to Haley. Haley might get the Romney endorsement. DeSantis people are saying, well, Romney trashed DeSantis. That proves DeSantis isn't a part of the establishment. It's not that. It's just more of the fact that the establishment doesn't even want you anymore because they know you failed. That's why. I mean, if it was DeSantis and Trump together, neck and neck, you would almost be guaranteed that all these people would be coming out of the woodwork to endorse DeSantis. But Mitt Romney just trying to say he's a smart authoritarian because he doesn't want Ron DeSantis to be successful compared to somebody like Nikki Haley, because they are trying to go after Ron now. But it's not because they are going after Ron because they want to help Trump. It's because they realize he's no longer a viable alternative to Donald Trump, because his campaign has shot themselves in the foot, and they keep falling in the polls, and then they do something even dumber, and then they fall even more, and then out of desperation they do something even dumber, and then they fall more. They keep spiraling out of control. They're terminally online. They think that's going to help them win an election somehow. DeSantis gave his announcement speech, not even really a speech. He did an announcement Twitter space on Twitter that was nothing short of an unmitigated disaster. Even his own support base couldn't even find ways to justify it, to the point where it's like, this guy really just blew it. He never really had a shot against Trump. I know that, but he completely blew whatever political capital that he had for the future. It's gone. It's down the drain. And he did it to himself. And his campaign is so insecure and concerned with his ego and their cultists. All the things they accuse us of doing, that's what they're doing. DeSantis, all they're doing, they're going out there, they're trying to slander people via guilt of association because they made a meme about Ron DeSantis wearing heels. And you could say, well, that's kind of a dumb meme or whatever, but it's true. I mean, the guy's like 5'7". His wife's taller than him, which first of all is very emasculating. And he goes out there every single speech he gives. He's wearing like these massive like cowboy boots with lifts. And the guy's from Florida. He's not even from Texas, first of all. And second of all, it's so fake. It's just so fake. That's just symbolic of his campaign. Trying to be something where they're not. Trying to be in over their head. They're in over their head. Nothing positive is getting done. They're not rising in the polls. They're a money sink where the money could go anywhere else. It could go to, building a ballot harvesting operation. But the money that DeSantis spends, that is money that could go to the eventual nominee, because it's not like it's close. If it's a close primary, that's one thing, okay? If he has a shot, it's one thing. He does not have a shot, and he never had a shot, a very poor political miscalculation. These people still think he's going to win the nomination when he's not going to win the nomination whatsoever. And as a result, there's money being spent attacking DeSantis. That money also goes down the drain because that's the downside of having resources poured in, because DeSantis is in the race. There's really no benefit for DeSantis being there at this point. I understand, well, it's like, Trump needs a fire lit under him. I understand that argument. I'm fine with that, but this is not much of a fire. I mean, Trump is already, very sharp when it comes to messaging, even was back when before the midterms were still going on, was improving to the point where I don't think DeSantis is pushing him further to the right on certain issues by being in this race. I mean, Trump is still trekking along the way he was before these clowns even were in the conversation. And these people act like all Trump does is he's obsessed with DeSantis because DeSantis is going to beat him. DeSantis is not going to beat him. Like, that's the funny part. We're only talking about DeSantis because these people are good content, honestly. Because these people are such clowns, and they're going to get clowned on so hard, and it's going to be so hilarious to watch that we're mocking them. We're mocking them because they tried. You take it, and listen, you take a shot at the king, you best not miss. And what did they do? That was the biggest miss I think we've ever seen. That was the biggest, I don't even know what analogy I could come up with that would even quantify it being that much of a miss. It was like you kick a field goal and it lands in the goalpost on the other side of the field. How does that even happen? Because that's exactly what DeSantis has done. That's exactly what his team around him has done, and he's listening to these people. That's kind of the number one reason why a lot of people don't like DeSantis, because you'll hear people all the time say, well, you used to like DeSantis. You praised this bill he signed 2 years ago. And it's like, it's true because I agree with the bill. But first of all, it's not like there were possibly things that could have made the bills better, which there were. And two, Ron DeSantis is not the only one who's responsible. He's basically a system quarterback there because he's got the overwhelming majority in both chambers of his state legislature. And three, that was before he decided to listen to all these insufferable clowns propping him up that are a part of the GOP establishment, like Pushaw, like others, people around him that are foaming at the mouth with Trump derangement syndrome, that want so desperately to get rid of Trump. So he took their bait to do what? Possibly finish below Nikki Haley. And you could say, well, Haley's worse, and I would agree, but that's not the point. The point is he's just embarrassed himself completely to the point where he's going to finish below somebody who is truly an insufferable human being who should be nowhere near politics anymore, because she has really proven time and time again to be a vicious globalist neocon. And we don't like those people. And she's also an election underperformer too, which is another thing that people in the Haley camp don't really seem to understand. You know, running a campaign, oh, well, she's a part of the establishment. She's electable. Not how it works. She almost lost South Carolina in 2010. South Carolina in 2010 voted to the left of the entire country. How's that even possible? That would be unheard of today. And it wasn't like she was running against some moderate Democrat who had more in common with Donald Trump than let's say your average Democrat at the time, which would have been Obama because he was the president. But yeah, no, she was running up against like a standard Democrat overall, maybe slightly moderate. There's no excuse for that to be a close race at all. And she only won by 4 to 6 points. It was embarrassing, completely embarrassing. So when it comes to DeSantis, it's like it is beating a dead horse, but at the same time, it's like pure content, because these people still think he's going to win. They still think he has a shot. And as a result, seeing their meltdown in about less than 3 months when Iowa happens is going to be pretty funny, because the Copes are just insane. And they're the same people that will say Trump can't win from the right. They're the same people that will trash my election analysis from the right when they claim that Donald Trump is paying for every single pollster to show him beating Ron DeSantis. The same people. They say Trump's claims about elections are disqualifying, but then they make claims as ridiculous as that hold no bearing in reality, when in reality they know donors are leaving. Even the establishment support they have is leaving. Like Mitt Romney endorsing or possibly endorsing Haley or trashing DeSantis doesn't mean Romney's coming aboard to Donald Trump. Of course not. Romney hates Donald Trump. What it does show is that even establishment people who were open, who praised DeSantis recently, Paul Ryan last year, he's non-committal now. He was praising DeSantis last year. Even the establishment doesn't want to work with them. It's not going to mean DeSantis is going to be good now or based and he's going to go out there and win. It just means he's probably going to lose even more, and it's just sad and embarrassing at this point. So there we go. Let's see. Philip Garcia says there's got to come a point where the angry phone calls sway these holdouts. They can't win without us. It's true, especially in these deep red districts. So that's what I'm saying. Like in some of these like swing areas or like blue areas, like Lawler's seat or even Bacon's seat, I don't really think those guys are going to come aboard. Maybe they'll vote present. We'll see if they make a deal. But it's like you have no reason, if you're in a Republican district, which I think 15 or so of these 22 holdouts are, maybe even more than that, there's no reason. And even the ones in the Democrat seats have no reason. Just vote quietly, move along. You know, you see a lot of these other establishment-friendly types doing that. Even McCarthy himself is voting for Jordan, so there's no reason for anybody to not vote for Jordan. Luke Newman says, I think Ben Shapiro is our ally. He's a big DeSantis chill. I think he would vote DeSantis over Trump when he gets the opportunity to. I think that I guess that's satire. Apex Caliber says DeSantis wearing stilettos and makeup wins election. Yeah, I mean, that's how these people think. Oh, it doesn't matter. You can't attack somebody on personal appearance. Well, you can, first of all, because it does matter. It's not ad hominem. It's Chad hominem, for one. For two, do you want some little beta bitch boy getting pushed around by world leaders? Or do you want somebody like Donald Trump who's going to push around these world leaders, who's going to basically say, don't mess with us? That's what you want. That's what you need. We're not going to save this country with weak leadership that says, well, we actually get things done in Florida. It's like, okay, well, you passed a few bills. You're not going to pass those bills with our Congress, first of all. Again, system quarterback governor. That's what he is. You might say, oh, he's passed a few bills, but is that really all his fault or his responsibility? Or is it the state legislature? Which even then, you could even argue that they're kind of weak and overrated, which I think is true. Let's see. Luke Newman says he's not an ally. Sorry, misclick. Yeah, I never would assume that Shapiro would be considered to be a friend or an ally. I mean, he voted for, and he didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, but he didn't vote at all in 2016. He said, I'm leaving the presidential slot blank, which means he's okay with Hillary Clinton winning. Then he comes around to Trump, as all these people did, and now he's anti-Trump again. And even if he might vote for Trump over Biden in 2024, it's not going to be enthusiastic. And it's not even just about he doesn't like Trump as a person or whatever. He's just on the issues is awful. You know, he's the same guy saying, well, DeSantis is better than Trump because DeSantis didn't mandate vaccines, when he was the one that was going out there shilling them for months and months on end, and then he slowly just walked it back and everybody forgot about it. No, Shapiro is a disaster, and he is not somebody that I would say is all that of our friend or a real, authentic conservative. He's just a neocon. He's a self-described neocon. I mean, a lot of people like him for some reason. I don't know if it's because he's become like a meme or if that's just like the way that people get introduced into politics. And even though you might say, well, on this social issue, he's good, or on this social issue, he's good, at the end of the day, he pushes over to the establishment. That's why he's able to have a platform that's as big as it is, that even at times gets promoted by big tech, not necessarily shafted like a lot of other independent content creators do. So there you go. Mr. Jimmy says, how can Republicans get a 7-2 majority on the Supreme Court in the future? Well, you're going to have people retire. People will pass over time, I'm sure. I mean, that's how it works. Eventually, you're going to have people that were appointed in the 2000s retire, get old. I mean, Kagan and Sotomayor, I don't know how old they are, but I'm sure they have they probably have like 10, 15 plus years on them. I mean, that's the way it is. We need to replace Thomas soon, the next, I think, Trump term, which I really hate to see him go. But if he stays on too long and a Democrat president takes over, not exactly going to bode well. And I don't think he would want that to be embedded into his legacy, even if that is some sort of a footnote or even if it's not his fault. So you look at somebody like Alito Thomas, next Trump term, especially you get a sizable Senate majority, they need to be replaced, because then you'll have people that are on the court who are there for a long time, and hopefully they're going to actually be solid. Also, could Roberts retire over the next 5 years? And if Trump is president, I know he's not really a big Trump guy at all, but Trump might have the chance to replace him. I don't know if it would happen, but that would be a massive upgrade overnight. Just there, that would basically make it a 6-3 court from a 5-4. So, all right. This will be the last call for Super Chats. We have been streaming for over an hour and 8 minutes, so I will end it in about 1 minute if we do not get any Super Chats. So this will be the final last call. Other than that, I'll look in regular chat. Let's see. Oh, Rep's still live. Yeah, I'm still live. I usually stream for like 75 minutes, usually on average. I mean, I haven't done like a long stream in a while. Like I do the election streams, but other than that, I haven't done like a 2-hour stream. Paul Zavko says, why the hell isn't Trump campaigning for Dan Cameron? I believe it's because he just sees it as a lost cause. He doesn't want to be closely tied to another election loss for a Republican. And while I think that early on it would have been more productive for him to campaign for Cameron, it seems as if at this point it is unlikely that Trump is going to go out there and stick his neck out for the guy because he's not really running that good of a campaign, which is what it is. The DM Productions, says Alan Lichtman, says Biden is poised to win in 2024. Yeah, the guy's been wrong about a lot of things. For the record, he did say Trump would win in 2016. He also said Mike Pence would eventually become president and Trump would be impeached and removed by Republicans. While Trump was impeached, he was not removed. He was also wrong about 2000. You apply his keys to elections like 1932. They would have had Hoover, I believe, winning in a landslide. So the guy is kind of blinded by his bias overall, I would say, which is becoming more apparent than in years past. And while I think the keys are general rules, like how can you look at Afghanistan and say that is not a foreign policy failure when it so clearly was? And how could you say it took a massive tax cut bill to give Trump the major legislation key, but Biden just redacting executive orders was enough to give him that key, which I don't believe it was. Is it a change? Yes. Is it major? No. I mean, plain and simple. Obama had a major change with the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act or whatever that was not so affordable, and Bush had his surveillance state and his foreign wars, that counted. I don't really remember what Clinton had to turn that key, if the key turned, which I believe it did. But I mean, either way, I don't really think those keys are all that definitive. I think they're guides. I'm not saying his analysis doesn't matter at all. But what I'm saying is I do believe that for somebody who claims to be unbiased, he's letting his bias cloud his judgment. I know I'm biased. I'm well aware. I think that's why a lot of people tune into me. If I was going to be this fence sitter, wouldn't probably work out so well. But either way, it's like, yeah, just because you have a bias doesn't mean that you are inaccurate. It means you just interpret things in a different way, and sometimes it can cloud the judgment. I think that everybody predicted the midterms, even the people on the left thought that it was going to be a much bigger wave than it was, unless they were just blindly wish casting, and they, became right accidentally, I guess. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with bias per se. You just have to be accurate in your assessments. Luke Newman says, I think McConnell is done. There's no way for him that he won't win the primary. Either he retires or loses his primary. Yeah, he's going to retire for sure by 2026. The DM Production says, I challenged him on a stream. You should challenge him to debate you. Alan Lichtman. I mean, isn't the guy old? Like, he's like in his, he's like very old. I don't know how debating somebody in his age range would go. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I'm sure he does know a lot of little tidbits about elections, going all the way back. I'm sure he does. I know quite a bit better than most people, but I'm just saying you can't look at what's going on right now with some of these things and say, well, this is going to bode well. He said the economy would hurt Trump in 2020, which maybe it did to a certain extent, but overall the people that voted based on the economy voted for Trump in 2020. Maybe it could have been a wider margin, but still. And he wants to give Biden credit for the economy this time around when a lot of people see other metrics and they're not exactly happy with what's going on because they just see what's going on around them every time they're at the grocery store or the gas pump, or they see the mortgage rates out of control, the interest rate. It's all crazy stuff that's going on. Follower of Christ says, let's say Jordan drops out. Who's the next likely, in your opinion? I don't know. There might be another compromise pick. I don't think it's going to be Scalise. I don't think it's going to be McCarthy. Could be somebody else, but I don't think he's going to drop out, especially now. He's in this to win this, but will he win it? We'll see. Does he only read super chats? Most of the stream, yes, because I'm just talking to the camera. I don't really look down while I'm monologuing, but then when I do the super chats, I just see the super chat panel. And then at the end of the stream, I read chats the one I just read. So, yeah, Lichtman said 9/11 hurt Bush. That did not hurt him at all. and he obviously won. I think Lichtman predicted him to win, but still. Luke Newman says, I think LTE analysis is bad as evidence. So, well, it's incomplete. It's very incomplete, I will say. And just because somebody happens to be right about certain election more so than another commentator, there's a lot of things that were wrong about 2022 that were not taken into account by a lot of sides. Incumbent governor over performance, which that's something that I think I missed, everybody missed. The down ballot effects happening and mattering more than they usually have, partially tied into that. And the other thing was funding, because of the fact that, yeah, funding didn't matter for the House in 2020. It didn't matter even as much in 2018, but it mattered in 2022 in a lot of places. And it's like, yeah, well, without Trump at the top of the ticket to weigh things up or possibly down in some, cases for Republicans, well, it seems as if the funding is going to be what's front and center. And we will end it after this super chat. DM Production says another thing tonight. Lichtman predicted tonight that Jordan won't win. Well, we'll have to see if that prediction withstands the test of time, because some of his do, and when he's right, he's very right, and then when he's wrong, he is very wrong. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Make sure or this stream, I should say. I know it's late. Like the stream down below. Subscribe. Hit the bell if you have not yet. And I will see you guys next time. Red Eagle, out.